Watching this video, what is key as we watch these three Israeli women gain their freedom after 470 what have been torturous days, is that as they leave that SUV there, and we'll zoom in a little bit more as they step out, we can see that they step out of the vehicle under their own power. They're able to walk out of the vehicle there, you could see it now, onto the Red Cross that received them. And that is a good sign. We did know that two of them were injured during the October 7th attacks. Romi Gonen, one of them, and Emily Damari, that they were injured in their hand from gunshot shrapnel, and their families had been told that their wounds worsened during their captivity, but they were able to walk out. That is one sign of their health there. But the other detail I draw your attention to as we watch this is that those are Hamas Qassam Brigade fighters around the vehicle, on top of the vehicle, providing security at this exchange. And it shows that however decimated they may have been by these 470 days of Israeli military operations there, some survive. They are still armed. They are still something of a force on the ground. They're not clear what their role will be going forward, but they certainly have not been eliminated as a fighting force. I should say that as this was happening earlier this morning, we and others witnessed Israeli forces withdrawing from some positions in Gaza as planned, locations in both southern and northern Gaza, which was part of the sequencing of this hostage release and ceasefire deal. And I should also note, given Mustafa Barghoudi's comments there, he's of course in the West Bank, that what is happening now or quite soon is that 95 Palestinian prisoners will be released as well. The Israeli military was waiting to confirm the release of the Israeli hostages before they began the process of releasing some 95 Palestinian prisoners, most of them women, a number of them teenagers. And I should note, given the administrative detention laws in Israel, that while that many of those who are being released today were under administrative detention. That is, they were not convicted of crimes. They were held under Israeli law. So you have a mix of prisoners who are being released in this very first stage. Again, I want to caution, as you well know, Fareed, that this is a multi-step plan. 3 hostages today, another handful in a week's time, 33 over the course of 6 weeks, and Palestinian prisoners, hundreds of them being released as those Israeli hostages are released. But at each stage, of course, there's a possibility of interruption or upset. We'll continue to follow the events closely. But for those 3 families here in Israel, they're just about to be reunited, a moment they'd only imagined for 470 days.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, and I would just point out to people who were watching those videos, you saw a lot of armed Palestinian militants. You noticed that they were fully masked. That is, of course, to evade Israeli security cameras and analysis of who they are.
We are here in Re'im near a military base where we expect that those 3 female hostages who we've just been alerted have now been transferred into the arms of the International Red Cross inside of Gaza. This is the point where they will then be transferred in vehicles. And behind me here, it may be hard to see at the moment, but there are 2 choppers, 2 military helicopters that we saw landing here within the last hour or so that will then transfer them to a hospital in central Israel. We've also been told, as of now, that Israel has been informed that according to the Red Cross, the 3 hostages are in good condition. They are expected to meet their mothers right here at the Re'im base. We've told that the mothers of all 3 of these women, Romi Gonen, Doron Steinbrecher, and Emily Damari, all 3 mothers will indeed be here at Re'im to meet their daughters for the first time after more than 15 months of captivity. And there is also quite a bit of symbolism at this very moment, Fareed, and that is because one of those hostages in particular, Romi Gonen, she was kidnapped by Hamas at the Nova Music Festival, which happened just behind the highway here that you can see behind me. And so From the same place where she was taken captive, she is also expected to experience her first moments of freedom, to finally be able to hug her mother after 15 months of captivity. Really an extraordinary moment, as we have also been watching, of course, Fareed, extraordinary moments playing out inside the Gaza Strip as well, as people are finally experiencing their first respite after 15 months of war, seeing hundreds of aid trucks beginning to cross into the Gaza Strip, people celebrating this moment where they no longer have to fear, at least for the time being, the threat of bombs and missiles that have been dropping on them, of course, over the course of the last 15 months. And so this really is one of those rare good news moments that I'm being able to report here, Fareed, after covering this war for the last 15 months.
President Biden just landed in Charleston, South Carolina. This is his last full day in office. We're waiting for a statement from him. I think he's on.
70 days. 4 more women will be released in 7 days. 3 additional hostages every 7 days thereafter, including at least 2 American citizens in this first phase. We pray for them and their families. They're going to be a long recovery ahead. By the 16th day of the deal, talks will begin in the second phase. This phase includes the release of Israeli soldiers and a permanent end of the war without Hamas in power or able to threaten Israel. Hundreds of trucks are entering Gaza as I speak. They're carrying assistance for civilians who suffered enormously from the war that Hamas started on October 7, 2023, nearly 15 months ago. Today alone, we anticipate several hundred trucks will enter the Gaza Strip as I'm speaking. And after so much pain, destruction, loss of life, today the guns in Gaza have gone silent. This was the deal that I outlined for the world back in May 31st. Many of you covered it at the time. It was endorsed overwhelmingly by folks around the world, including the UN Security Council, unanimously endorsed the deal, and developed in coordination with Egypt, Qatar, and Israel. I've worked in foreign policy for decades, and this is one of the toughest negotiations I've been part of. Many of you who followed these negotiations will attest that the road to this deal has been not easy at all, a long road. But we've reached this point today because of the pressure Israel built on Hamas, backed by the United States. Some said my policy of a firm support for Israel was relentlessly pursuing diplomacy, risked drawing America into a wider war in the region. I listened to those voices, many of whom I respected a great deal, but I concluded abandoning the course I was on would not have led us to the ceasefire we're seeing today. But instead, it would have risked a wider war in the region that so many feared. Now the region has been fundamentally transformed. Hamas's longtime leader, Sinwar, is dead. Hamas sponsors in the Middle East have been badly weakened by Israel, backed by the United States. Hezbollah, one of Hamas's biggest backers, was significantly weakened on the battlefield, and its leadership was destroyed. Even as we worked for diplomatic solutions in Lebanon, we provided ongoing assistance and supported Israel's military campaign against Hezbollah, including its efforts to take out the terror infrastructure along the border between Israel and Lebanon. Israel's campaign was extremely successful, so much so that by the end of November, the United States had brokered a ceasefire in Lebanon. Hezbollah did what it said it would never do. It cut its deal and abandoned Hamas. And today, in Lebanon, there's finally a new president and prime minister, both of whom support a sovereign Lebanon without Hezbollah running the show or playing any part in it. The Assad regime next door in Syria is gone, removing Iran's ready access to Lebanon. Iran is in the weakest position in decades after the U.S. military helped defend Israel from Iranian missiles and supported Israel's military response inside Iran. Just look across the region. In Lebanon, there's an opportunity for a future free from the grip of Hezbollah. In Syria, a future free from the tyranny of Assad. For the Palestinian people, a credible path to a state of their own. And for the